Hello, my dear children. Once again, I welcome to you all in online class. So, students, today I am going to teach you chapter number 10 of literature, that is the Quarrel. Okay, so now let's discuss about the author of this lesson. So, she is Lucia May Alcott, was one of the best known American authors of her time. Her novel Little Women was based on Alcott's childhood with her three sisters. Some of her other known works are Little Men, Joe's Boys, and Under the Leaves. Okay, so that was all about the author. Now let's come to our chapter. So, in the first, let's see the characters. So, the characters are Joe, Amy, Meg, Beth, Mrs. March, Lowry, and the narrator. So, in the scene first, in the scene 1, what happened? Let's see. It's a lovely Saturday afternoon. The March sisters, Meg and Jo, are in their room getting ready to go out when their younger sister Amy walks in. So the two sisters, Meg and Jo, they're discussing about to go out when their younger sister, she is Amy. So when she is out, when she is not there, they decided to go out. Okay, now there's an air there is an air of secrecy around Meg and Joe, which makes little Amy very curious. So, about this, the Amy, her sister, her younger sister, she is very curious about. She wants to know. She is curious about to know where they are going to where they are going. Okay, so she is curious about that. Now, Amy said, "Girls, where are you going?" Now, the younger sister, she is Amy. Amy, she asked to her sisters, "Where are you going?" Now Jo replied, her sister Jo. So she replied, "Never you mind." She said to her, "Never you mind." Now Amy, "Do tell me, I should think you might let me go too, for I haven't got anything to do and I am so lonely." So the younger sister, she is Amy, so she is telling to her sisters that, "Do tell me, I should think you might and let me go too." So she is saying like that. Now Meg, "I can't dear because you aren't invited." So Meg tell her that you aren't invited. That's why I can't. That's why we can't. Now Joe said, "You can't go, Amy, so don't be a baby and whine about it." So Joe tell her younger sister Amy. She said to Amy that you can't go, Amy, so don't be like a baby, so don't behave like a baby. Now Amy, you're going somewhere with Laurie, I know you are. So the younger sister Amy, she is saying you're going somewhere. She is saying you're going somewhere. I know you are going, so I know you are going. So to show she knew that they are going to the theater to see the seven castless. So it means not to tell me in time I shall go to. So she knew all this. She knew everything. She knew all the things about their secrecy, that they were going to watch the theatre. Okay, to see the theatre they were going. Now what happened? Now Amy, what she did? Amy sits down on the floor and begins to cry at the moment Laurie calls from the door. The two girls start to exit the stage, leaving their sister wailing. Now what happened? Amy sits down on the floor. So she sits down on the floor and begins to cry. Now she is crying. She begins to cry at the moment. At that moment she is crying. And Laurie calls from the door that two sisters start to exit the estate, leaving their sister wailing. So they're leaving their sister. Okay? Now what happened? Amy, you will be sorry for this. Joe, March, see if you aren't. Now Amy tell. Now Amy told to her sisters that what she told? She told to her sisters that you will be sorry for this. Okay? Now Joe said, "Fiddlesticks. Joe said fiddlesticks, and she was laughing. Now, what is fiddlesticks? Fiddlesticks means an old fashioned way of saying nonsense. Okay, so that is fiddlesticks. Now, in the scene second, what happened? Narrator. The girls have a lovely time at the play, but in spite of that, Joe's pleasure has a drop of bitterness in it. Pleasure has a drop of bitterness in it. What it means? It means even though she is having a good time, there is something that makes her feel upset. Now they were discussing, the girls have a lonely time at the play. Now they went to watch the theater, to the seven castless. So they went there to watch that, but they feel lonely there. Okay, and they are, even though she is having a good time, they were having a good time, but then also there is something that makes them feel upset. Okay, so now the fairy Queen's yellow curls remainder of Amy and their little fight. Now they're in that thread, in that seven castless. What happened? There is one fairy Queen's yellow curls remainder of Amy. So that remainder of her younger sister Amy and the little fight, and also her little fight. Now Jo has always had a hard time controlling her fairy temper, but her anger never lasts long, and soon she soon starts to repent. Now what happened? Joe has always, she was controlling her temper, but then also long last, and she soon starts to repent. What is repent? Repent means feel sorry. Now Joe is feeling sorry for Amy. Okay. Now when Joe and Meg get home, now they get home. They both get home. Now Amy is sitting. They saw what they saw. They saw Amy, their younger sister Amy, is sitting in the parlor. What is parlor? A sitting room in a private house. So in the parlor she was sitting. So reading. Now what she was doing there in the parlor? She was reading. Okay. Now she never lifts her eyes from the book or asks a single question. Now what she was doing? She never lifts her eyes from the book or asks a single question. She was not asking a single question also. The next day what happened? Meg and Beth and Amy are sitting together in the parlor. Now next day Meg, Beth and Amy, they were sitting in that parlor. Now Joe runs into the room. Now Joe runs to the room. Joe, has anyone taken my books? Now Joe, what she said, she is asking, has anyone taken my book? My book is missing. Now she was asking that, has anyone taken my book? Now Meg and Beth, no. What? Immediately Meg and Beth said no. Okay. Now what happened? Joe, Amy, you have got it? Now Joe asks to her younger sister that, Amy, you have got it? You have got it, my books? Now Amy said, no, I haven't. So she replied, no, I don't know where is your books. Now Joe, you know where it is then. Now Joe said her that, you know where is my books. So where are my books? Now Amy, no, I don't. Now again Amy replied that, I don't know where is your books. Now Joe, shaking Amy by the shoulder, that's lie. Now Joe said to her that, you are telling lie. Now Amy replied, now Amy, scold as much as you like, you will never see your silly old books again. Old book again, I burned it. Now Amy replied and Amy replied that, scold me as much as you like. Scold me as much as you like. You will never see your silly old books again. I burned it. Now what she did, she burned the Joe's books. Okay. Now Joe, what, you wicked girl? Now Joe get angry, and she said to her younger sister, to Amy, that you are a wicked girl. What is wicked? Wicked means cruel. So you are a wicked girl. She said to her sister, now I never can write it again. I will never forgive you as long as I live. So Jo tell to her sister that I will never forgive you. Okay, as long as I live. Now Jo runs into the attic. What is attic? Attic means a space or room just below the roof of the house. So that is attic. So now Jo runs up to the attic to weep over her loss. Mrs. March walks in and hears the story. Now Mrs. March, the mother, she came there and she hears the story about all that was happening there. All okay, now she hears the story. Now what happened? Mrs. March said, what you did was very wrong. Now she she was scolding to her Amy that what you do was very wrong. Amy, the book had only half a dozen little fairy tales. So in that book there was half dozen of fairy tales. But Jo had worked over them in overworked them patiently, and her mother tell her that Jo had worked over them patiently. So she had put her whole heart into writing each of the stories. You must apologize to her. Now her mother said that you must apologize for this, for the burning of books. So now Amy said, you are right, mother, I will. Now Amy, she agreed and she said to her mother that I will. Okay. Now at time Jo comes down to the dining room looking grim. It takes all of Amy's courage to walk up to her. Now what happened? Amy, please forgive me. Jo, I am very very sorry. Now Amy was sorry. She was sorry for her okay, for her behavior. Now she said to Jo that please forgive me, I am very very sorry. Now Jo said, I shall never forgive you. You don't know how much you have hurt me. Now Jo said to her that you don't know how much you have hurt me. Jo quickly takes her tea from the dining table and marches out of the room, not looking at Amy. Now Jo quickly takes a tea from the now what Jo did, Jo quickly takes a tea from the dining table and she went to her room. Okay, so she went into her room. Okay, now in now we are moving towards the scene 3. Now let's see what is happening in that. So Jo is still angry the next day. Now again Jo is still angry. Now next day she is still angry. Now she can't stand the tension in the house and decides to go ice skating with Laurie. Now she don't want to stand the tension in her house. So she decides to go for ice skating with Laurie. Okay. Now Amy runs after her. She wants to apologize and hopes Jo will be in a better mood after skating. Now Amy, what she did, she runs after her and she wants to apologize. She wants to say sorry to her sister for her fault. Now she knew that her mood will be better after skating. So at the river, Jo sees her coming and turns her back, ignoring her. Now Jo saw that her sister Amy turns her back. So what she was doing, she was ignoring her. Okay. Now Jo, is the ice thick enough for skating? Now Jo was saying to Laurie that is the ice thick enough for skating? Now Laurie replied, it isn't safe in the middle. Keep near the shore. Come, let's race. Now they were racing. Okay. So now narrator. Now the narrator was Jo and Laurie scat away, zigzagging. Now Jo and Laurie were skating. They were skating, zigzagging. Okay, down the river. Amy is struggling to put her skates on and has not heard Laurie's warning about the ice. Now Amy, what she did, she not heard Laurie's warning and she was skating in the middle of that ice. Okay. Now Laurie soon vanishes around the bend of the river. Joe is just about to turn when she sees Amy skating towards the middle of the river. All at once there is a crash of ice, a splash of water, and a cry as Amy throws up her hands and goes down. Now there was a crash in ice and a splash of water, and she was crying. She was inside the ice. Okay, now Joe tries to rush forward, but her feet seems to have no strength in them. Now Joe tries to rush forward, but her feet seems to have no strength in them. For a second, she stands motionless. Okay, now for a second she was motionless. She stares at a little hood above the water with fear in her heart. Now she was in fear. Okay, now Lori rushes swiftly past her towards the crack in the ice. Okay, now Lori, what she did? Bring a pole, quick, quick. Now Joe said to Lori that bring a pole. Quickly bring a pole, she said to Lori. Now Lori is calm and he lies on the ice and holds Amy firmly by the arm. Now what Lori did, she is calm as she lies on the ice and holds Sammy firmly by the arm. Joe drags a long pole from a fence nearby and holds it out to Amy. Together, she and Lori get the child out. They carry her back home. Okay, now they carry her back home. Okay, now in the scene 4, let's see what is happening here. So later in the evening, Amy lies fast asleep, rolled up in warm blankets before a fire. Joe is pale and quiet as she watches Amy sleep. Joe, are you sure she is safe? Now, what happened? Amy lies fast asleep, rolled up in a warm blanket. Now, Mrs. March, quick, safe, dear. You were sensible in covering her up and getting her home quickly. Now, her mother said to Joe and Lori that quite safe. Dear, you were sensible in covering her better. Okay? Now, Joe. Lori did it all. Mother, if Amy should die, it would be of my fault. Now, Lori did it. Joe said to her mother that Lori did it all. And mother, if Amy should die. Now, Joe said to her mother that if Amy will die, that it would be my fault. I didn't bother to make sure Amy had heard Lori's burning about the eyes. It's my horrible temper. I try to cure it, but it always breaks over worse than ever. Okay, now Mrs. March, never get tired of trying, dear, and never think it is impossible to conquer your faults, Joe. Okay, so that said, this is said by Mrs. March. Now, Joe, you don't know how bad it is. Oh, mother, do help me. Now, Joe said to her mother, help me. Okay, now, Mrs. March, I will, my child. Remember this day and promise yourself that you will do nothing like it again. Now, Mrs. March said to her daughter that you have to promise me and you have to promise yourself that you will do nothing like it again. We all have our faults, but we must try to improve, even if it takes all our lives, okay? All our lives. Joe, softly stroking Amy's hair. I went to sleep angry. I wouldn't forgive her. And today, if I hadn't been for Lori, it might have been too late. I will never be so wicked again. Now Joe said to her mother that I will never be so wicked again. Okay? Now narrator, as if she heard, Amy opened her eyes and had out her arms with a smile that warmed Joe's heart. Now what happened? Next day, Amy opened her eyes and held out her arms with a smile. Her warmed Joe's heart. Neither said a word, but they hugged each other. Now what they did, they hugged each other and forgave their anger with a kiss. Okay, so they forgot all their quarrels, and whatever they did, they forgot that all, and they hugged each other and forgave and forgot their anger with a kiss. Okay, so we are done with the explanation of the chapter. I hope you all enjoyed the session. Thank you.